Yes.
So maybe if I could just have everyone's attention, we're ready for our next speaker. We're going to have Jyoti Balani, who's going to talk to us. I'll let her introduce the talk.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day. It's beautiful outside, so that helps. So I'm Jyoti Balani. I'm founder and managing director.
Oh, I'm sorry, the mic is. Yeah, it's just got to switch on it.
Oh, here we go.
Just got to switch up.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Happy Saturday again, everyone. So I'm Jyoti Balani. I'm founder and managing director of a consultancy called FreshRiver.ai. I started it 5 years ago after a 22-year corporate career in the digital infrastructure and telecom industry. So I grew up as a software engineer building wireless and wireline networks at AT&T, Texas Instruments, Lucent Technologies, if you guys remember them, a couple of mid-sized players, and finally exiting 5 years ago because I was looking for the next big thing. And the next big thing that I fell into was conversational AI 5 years ago. So there were some early adopters, Citigroup, Google, of course, Lowe's, Johnson & Johnson, all experimenting with, back then, what was not generative AI, but another flavor. As everybody knows, AI started around the 50s and it went through its ups and downs, and it wasn't until we had enough compute power and storage and data, everything that we've generated over the last 25 years of the web and mobile, to help us arrive to where we've come at, which is what we're calling the, if I can, oh, I guess it doesn't want to do that. I can give it.
You aren't sharing it, so your Zoom people didn't see it. But you would start, it's okay, start it again.
Okay, you gotta say none of that.
Yeah, talk about how this guy just walked in and. No?
Yeah,
Was it working before?
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's working.
Okay.
All right, the Zoom folks can hear us now?
Zoom folks could always hear you, they just couldn't see the slides.
Oh, good, okay,
Now they can double check, yes, they can now see the slides.
fabulous. So where we have arrived into actually has a term similar to, the industrial age. It's called the exponential age. And it was creeping up on us the last couple of years. I didn't realize it until I actually read a book by that name. It's a book called Exponential Age by Azeem Azhar. Highly recommend. He's a very well-regarded journalist and also an entrepreneur. And so here's what is happening. The machines, I'm going to use machines and AI interchangeably because there's a physical manifestation and there is a software manifestation, but they've been developing at an increasing exponential rate. We all know what the word exponential means. It's not going to go on a slow pace. It's really speeding up. And the problem we've got as a society, as business, political institutions, 70,000 years and more of evolution, we can only adapt at a certain pace. So when something exceeds a rate, which is where the exponential rate of how machines are coming about, the result is being called the exponential gap. And that, if everybody's feeling like the world's moving at such high speed you can't keep up, it's normal because we're human. And that gap is the power of the new technology and our ability as humans to keep up. Feels a little scary, feels a little discombobulating, if that's a word. That's a word right there.
Let's take I-95 North, New Jersey Turnpike.
Oh, please don't leave. I'm not done yet. I'll try to move fast. Is this thing? I could have sworn it was.
It should be, yeah, it's not, it's wireless. It shouldn't need to be on site, but it might be.
All right, we'll do the good old fashioned. Let's see what happens. No?
Did you click in? Yes.
Okay. So here's where we're headed. Economics, as we know it, is going to change forever. And it is hard for us to understand. In fact, a lot of people who have created generative AI do not understand how it works. Right? These are algorithms that are making decisions every day. The problem we've got is It's tearing apart the society, business, political frameworks that we've developed to this date. And so the question is, how will we cope? And, I'm not worried because humans have adapted and survived this long through many, many ages. And we will have to figure it out, but we'll have to think differently. So I'm gonna first start with a little bit of history, and it's complicated, as relationships are, right? And they're messy. But let's kind of take a dive back in order to dive forward. So we've had an evolving relationship. We first invented machines as tools to help ourselves, to make our lives better. But the relationship grew complex as the tools got a little bit more sophisticated and advanced. And that's a good thing, right? Us humans always wanted to solve problems and move things forward. That's what defines us, right? In the food chain too. So in the prehistoric era to about the 18th century, simple stuff, levers, more around simpler, relatively speaking, things that printing press, of course, changed everything. Believe it or not, the era of social media that we live in started with the printing press, where knowledge could be shared. That's when we got into what's known as the Industrial Revolution. And at that time, and pay attention to this as we go through the history arc, is that humans controlled and operated. We were in the driver's seat, literally, for the physical labor and production. Things got better, but there's always bad sides to stuff, right? It's never a clean impact and outcome. Then the Industrial Revolution, 18th to about the 19th century, we got steam power, we got factories, we're moving along, production's up, manufacturing is progressing, machines are starting to replace human labor in certain instances. And at that time too, so we've been there before, where we talk about what current looks like, is that we've been here before. We had fears of job displacement. Think of it called Luddites, if I'm saying that right, Luddites, right? And we learned from that. But another thing happened, we started getting reliant on these machines. Like, can we all think about living without the machines that have produced all the things that we love, the gadgets that we're holding, right? We'll never go back. We don't want to go back. Then came electrification and automation around the 19th and earlier 20th century, which now gets into probably the whole generation that's sitting in this room today and on the phone or on Zoom, is that we are transforming machine operations with electric motors and generators. Then it gets better because now we've figured out that machines can automate tasks that are repetitive, even though those are jobs, right, that sustain humans. And then we transitioned from being operators to supervisors and controls. We were overseeing the machines that started to do more of our work. Then comes the digital revolution and computing, mid to where we're at right now. And what's happened is our relationship is further evolving. And it's still in continuity, which says, who's going to do what? Who's in charge? We'll cover that a little bit later. And the machines are gaining the ability to process more and more cognitive related tasks. Mother Nature gave us this. We've got the ultimate algorithm. Right? AI was actually created out of the desire to mimic how humans think and what we do. And so we have to date interacted with these interfaces, creating a symbiotic relationship. Our phones, keyboards, right, you name it, that's the interface that we have known so far. And now we come to present day, AI and robotics. Now the lines are blurring in the relationship of who is in what role. And that is where we're finding ourselves with a lot of decisions to be made. And there's unfortunately fewer that are in charge of making that decision. So machines can learn, adapt, and make decisions. The question becomes, what about human agency? How many of you in the room think you have agency today in the world we live in relative to, say, social media, how we're doing work? Because you're avoiding, you're not letting the machines control what you think. And what's interesting is that there's a book called The Chaos Machine, I think came out last year. Max Fisher, another journalist, who has basically exposed, he studied the rise of social media. And the key element that the Silicon Valley companies figured out is how to hack human agency. We're controlled by our hormones. Our behaviors have a formula, and that's what even Mark Zuckerberg said it in, I think, one of the interviews recently, that his dream is to figure out ultimately what's the algorithm that controls us. Well, we should know that, right? That's like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but it's very hard for humans to resist the click because it's dopamine, right? It's actually making us want to do more, to stay there, because the number one thing that they need to do is engage us, keep us engaged. So while the relationship is still evolving and there's promise of collaboration, where there's respective strengths between humans and machines, but they are beginning to unfold and uncover unintended, intended consequences. And I put that in parentheses because there are those in power that are making decisions that are not always in the interest of human beings. Okay, that's it. And these are gray areas. I'm not here to pull you in one direction or another. My purpose today is to ground everybody in what is happening, what's unfolding, so you're able to make more informed decisions and actually understand what's happening a little bit under the covers. So let's take this example. This is what I was alluding to. This massive AI experiment has been in progress ever since the concept social media was even coined. Because AI has been in our lives and we don't know it because it stays hidden. So let's take a look at what AI and social media has done as an impact to humans. It's created new industries, influencers, right? There's now millionaires, young people, in particular, figured out that there are jobs to be done as influencers to sell what? More products, more services. For the same companies that are trying to find new channels to make money. And it's creating livelihoods. We should not forget that they create livelihoods. TikTok is a great example, right? Being banned. There is hue and cry because yes, it is going to impact livelihoods, but there's a downside to that. Say China's trying to control the US population. These are all these gray areas that we've got to now start thinking about. AI is a crucial technology and it is hidden. So I'll give you an example of where it was not hidden and it was taken out. Microsoft's chatbot on Twitter, now called X, formerly Twitter, called Hey, was put into Twitter to engage. And it soon turned out to be a very toxic participant, and Microsoft took it down because it demonstrated how an algorithm behaves and can be trained, because there were people who were playing with it a little bit, but they were able to train it. Similar to how people are hacking ChatGPT today. There's a website called Jailbreak ChatGPT, because you can hack it, but what big tech companies have realized is they got to put it inside and not have it out exposed. It's the vast amounts of data that we generate and have generated for the last 25 years that the platforms are using to create personalized experiences. And it's great, it's free. Is it? Really free. And of course, it's used for many, many purposes around content. Everything from curation to user engagement. But if you think about the content that sits on these platforms, on any platform, from Reddit to Meta, anything, the question is who's moderating this content and who's filtering it? What was interesting in this book, Chaos Machine, Reddit had reached an era where there was supremacy, there was a lot of bad stuff going around, but they said, nope, our policy is we don't interfere, it's freedom of speech. But we know what's also happened on Facebook at the time, in the 2016 election. So the question is, while AI can detect and remove harmful or inappropriate content, is it really helping us remove hate speech, misinformation, explicit content in the name of freedom of speech? Now, we're a democracy. Freedom of speech is critical to our existence. But if algorithms are being used to help companies and capitalism monetize, but it's breaking our societies apart, what should we do? These are real questions facing now, Congress, these are debates going around in the US government on what we should do. And of course, there's lobbyists and, big techs in there. Complicated. The one thing, the number one success metric for companies that harness AI, especially social media companies, because we're using that as an example, but this question can be asked of any industry, is human attention. That's what they're trying, their ultimate goal is human attention, which is what is monetized by ad revenue, which is why it's to us, but we are the product. Our attention is the fuel that drives this. But look at the social impacts. People are lonelier than ever, even though it was intended to be bringing communities together. If you listen to Mark Zuckerberg about how groups and communities should be coming together, while I'm not saying that's not true, that's not happened, but people are now, it's because you're seeing the best of and not reality of people's lives. People are torn apart even more, and I'm sure you've all seen documentaries and coverage on that. The political impact includes hyper-partisanship. It's torn our country apart. You can literally trace the impact of AI to why there is a big divide, about equal. You can see that in our elections. It's actually traced back to this fascinating in the chaos machine. It goes back to even pre-Reddit. 4chan is where the gamers all used to hang out. And that's where they realized the power of moral outrage, of using inflammatory content to drive human beings to engage. Because we humans are wired to get involved in that kind of content. So it's actually been, it's very, very strategic in where we have arrived at where we're at. So hacking human attention it's really broken down into a science. Moral outrage and controversial content drive engagement. That is a fact. Most people don't realize it because once you get into it, even in conversation between humans and humans, just think about it. When there's something that pushes your buttons, you get engaged. You will fight for it because you believe it's right. Imagine that happening at the millions of people doing it online. There are studies and reports, and of course we're an educational institution, so this is, look at the research that's been done that shows that content that invokes outrage, anger, and controversy gets more engagement than benign. And this feeds the platform's key metrics. These are facts. It's not my opinion, these are facts. So now you say, if you think of ChatGPT and generative AI models like that, it's also changing how we learn, how to learn. There's good and bad, everybody's got access to it. What happened almost 2 years ago is when OpenAI started the arms race by putting a conversational AI interface to their model. 100 million users in 1 month. And everybody believes what they see on it. Now we're seeing the beginnings of the outcomes, the lawsuits. Lawyers or people think that they can be lawyers in the courtroom because they can ask ChatGPT questions about the law. We'll get through it, right? We'll get through this. Students are using it. We don't know whether the facts are true. ChatGPT will tell you with highest confidence level something that it's utterly wrong about. But you're so sure because you're like, oh, it's coming from this magical place. So thinking about our cognitive learning, this is from the report of the World Economic Forum in 2020, which they revised in 2022. We're going to have to educate humans for the 97 million new jobs where humans and machines are going to collaborate. We're not going to be the Luddites that say, oh, I'm not going to use it. It's too late. It's in everything that you do. Unless you want to go live in a mountain and cut off from everything, that's an option. You're gonna have to play in this era. And if you're gonna play, you're gonna have to learn because the jobs are gonna change. And alongside the 97 million new jobs, 85 million will be eliminated, and they're already started. In fact, the most surprising thing is it's being eliminated in the tech sector. You know why? Because we now have AI software engineers, literally AI doing the work of junior software engineers. There's one that just got released called Devin, Devin. Fascinating. So in anticipation of those kinds of jobs being replaced by AI, companies are starting to lay off workers. Coders are very worried. How long did we try to push people into STEM? Get STEM degree, learn how to program. Like, my own company, we don't need to hire junior developers. We're gonna use these. And we're gonna use that to train junior machine learning engineers so they don't have to do the grunt work, but they have Devin as their assistant. We're gonna do it, we're doing it. We're not gonna hire 10 engineers to work on the AI projects for our clients. So then you ask yourself, what about the education system? I think in October, I was here talking about how the role is gonna change in the world of engineering. So educators and administrators will have to rethink how to educate the next generation. And employers will have to figure out how to reskill their existing workforce when that's left. What's gonna happen to the workforce that's being let go? How do you reskill? We gotta organize ourselves. So the 5 years that I've been deep in this space, one of the things I've learned is generative AI, while yes, it will change the interaction between us and machines, it's very, very experiential. What that means is you cannot go to any institution on this planet that will teach you how generative AI works for 2 reasons. One, it's changing so fast. By the time you've even taken a week-long or 2-week course, it's already moved on. It's that fast. Remember the word exponential, right? And 2, you have to learn how it works by doing. Because even the scientists who created it don't know how it works. And you gotta figure out, well, where does it go right, where does it go wrong? Other things that are happening at the same time, blockchain, quantum compute, VR, AR, metaverse, although, they're all in different stages of acceptance. That's where I do believe humans can realize our true superpowers, right? I believe we all have multiple superpowers that can be uncovered that have been harder to uncover because there hasn't been enough technology or automation. By the way, a couple of stats. There are 11 countries who have access to quantum computers. Quantum computers will and are hacking their way through the US system. So all the outages you hear about, AT&T, LinkedIn, Caesars, MGM, they're just trailers. The NIST standard that's being upgraded to get the internet to be safer, because today the current NIST standard can be hacked. So we're in some interesting times right now.
Could I interrupt just for a second?
Please.
Could you, I'm sorry, but the last slide, the very interesting images, was there a theme that you were going for?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I was born in a small village in India called Ajmer, Rajasthan. So when I think about where I stand today and where I came from, and if I go back, and I went back maybe 10, 15 years ago, I couldn't talk to them about what AI is. But I have the best time when I'm with humans. Right, so the reason I have these images up is so that we don't forget we are human and where we come from. Right? When I do what I do all day long, with AI and algorithms, makes me want to go more to be with humans. So as deep as I've gone into AI, I've gone as deep into anthropology. Because I realized I'm going to have to understand how humans work and what we really want. Right? While I'm a capitalist, and my team's a capitalist, we are responsible capitalists because we don't want to have our hands on creating a world that is gonna tear apart society, right? So the idea is to sort of emote. I forgot to mention that, but that's actually where I come from, and I grew up in the Middle East, you know, camel. So there's a kind of theme there. Okay, so the question now is, how are we going to manage this advancing AI? The good news is we're going to be able to see, and we're already seeing it, COVID vaccines actually were a result of a lot of machine learning algorithms that are already trying to solve for protein structures for the vaccine. Climate change, environmental sustainability. How are we going to, there's an oxymoron here because AI actually generates more carbon because it sits on these GPUs that consume a lot of the power, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Education and personalized learning. Imagine being able to educate every child on the planet according to their learning abilities. Pretty exciting. Scientific research and discovery. Discovering new drugs. How many of you have loved ones that are struggling with a disease that has not been solved for? Both my husband and I, our moms have Parkinson's. Not solved for yet, right? Smart infrastructure and urban planning. Urbanization has been, you know, on a roll, but how do we live smarter? You see more cities going more green. How do you get there faster, right? There's plenty of opportunity to help us figure out how we want to live. And then, of course, business efficiency and customer service, which is, you know, the number one thing is capitalism is how do you sell things better, faster, cheaper. The bad, so we're already seeing job displacement and economic disruption. It has arrived pretty quickly too. The security risk and malicious use, we're seeing it. Deepfakes, everybody's hearing this. Everything in the news you're hearing is a result of a lot of these systems being deployed very quickly because they're easier to go deploy across the board in any industry, in any organization. Ethics and human rights issues are coming in. So I don't know if many of you know this, but all these large language models that have been trained since 2017 haven't been just automatically guzzling the data, which by the way has not been cleaned for any ethics or bias issues. They hired human beings as far as in Africa to go clean the data at $1 a day. And one of the repercussions of them looking at the data that they had to use for training is they developed psychological issues because the data and content was just awful. It's as similar as when the internet was born. There were people who would keep us safe from all these harmful images. It's the same issue, but it's even worse. Existential risk and loss of control. So now, you know, there's this wave of dystopia and utopia that keeps coming and going. You know, I think it's Bill Gates, even Stephen Hawking had said, you know, AGI will destroy us as we know it. If you think about, you know, there's theories around if you tell the algorithm to optimize for something that the humans are not needed. That's sort of, you know.
I actually closed my talk with that quote from Jeffrey Hinton. Yeah, exactly.
Right, so is that true? Is that not? The question is, how are we all going to make decisions? People in control, right? We are, as citizens, in control to a certain point, but that is where we've got to watch and see what unfolds. Social political manipulation and disinformation, we've seen that, right? This is the first year in a long time that I think it's 60% of the world is holding elections, something like that, right? And so having this kind of technology was going to bring who up to the forefront in a lot of countries. And then the environmental impact of AI systems, that's what I was talking about earlier. So these GPUs are gas guzzlers. And as everybody knows, NVIDIA stock's going through the roof because the adoption rate, so just connect all the dots, right, on what's about to happen. That's the oxymoron of this. And then the ugly. We talked about the existential risk, loss of human agency and control, right? Is it going to get worse? I mean, with social media, sure, you can go uninstall the app and say, I'm not using it, unless you depend on it for your own economic, you know, income generation. And then AI does drive for unconstrained resource acquisition, We're seeing that now. These are humans making the decisions to give it what it needs to grow faster. And then there is value misalignment and indifference to humans. Whoever puts these systems in, who's gonna say, hey, make sure don't harm the humans along the way? No one's really saying that. That's not gonna go into the algorithms. So I'd like us to walk through a few big, hairy questions that I'd like all of you to just have in your mind. We don't have answers yet, but you should be aware that these are questions that are lurking in our relationship as we evolve. So can AI mimic Mother Nature by hacking the human mind? Who should be in charge of AI? Government? Private sector? Do citizens have any say? Do consumers have any say? Is AI augmenting humanity? You know, enabling, augmenting, just think of those words. Is it helping us escape reality? Is it enabling digital slavery? Because these models don't train themselves, right? Are we going to get humans that have no involvement? By the way, they're not told. An example I was giving you on these farms, human farms, where they're constantly putting the data in and they're testing. They're not told what it's for because there's layers of secrecy between which end company is using it. But it's effectively digital slavery. I sometimes tell my kids, my kids in their 20s, I say, you know, we're all digital slaves because we sit in front of these computers and we do what they ask us to do. Can preserving humanity be our collective top metric? Right, today the top metric is user engagement, human attention. Should we flip it? Human superpowers. Let's focus on ourselves for a minute. These are the things AI does not have. It does not feel. Fear, courage, hope, trust. We do. We all have kindness as a superpower. We must not forget that. This has to be at the forefront of decisions that have to be made. And the final thing I will leave you with is that we should leave no one behind because the exponential age has arrived. Can't put your head in sand, but you gotta make sure you bring people along with you. Thank you. Yeah, let's take questions, please.
Okay, I teach Rutgers. One of the questions I'm asking myself more and more is, what should I be teaching? And how do I test that the students are learning what I'm teaching? Do you have any recommendations in terms of like authors or, you know, websites or something that will talk in sort of general terms of what people are thinking about?
That's a great question. So I started a training program back in 2020. Actually, Professor Larry is one of our advisors. That very question is what I asked myself, because I said, okay, I see this future coming, but what should we be teaching everybody? Because, you know, as a capitalist, I need to build out my company and hire people. So we start with this process of discovering your own superpowers. And it's the experiential way, right? So if you think about how many kids do you have in your class, just on average, 20, 30?
Probably 10.
10. These 10 human beings come with multiple superpowers in them. Let's make that assumption, 10. What is it that will help them find their ikigai, if I'm saying that word correctly? Right? How many of you have heard the word ikigai? So it's a Japanese term. You know, the Japanese don't have a word for retirement. For them, it's finding that intersection of what you're good at, what you love to do, what the world needs, and what can help you make a living. If you solve for those things for every given human being, they'll be very happy. It doesn't matter whether you're an artist or an engineer. So to me, the definition of a mentor, a teacher, is to help them develop the ability to discover that, and that comes through doing. So if you tell them what's the basic things that they should learn, it's human skills. The one thing that our education system, anything, K through 12, college, is not teaching this, the discovery process. So And you don't have to do that for your entire course, but insert it and the answer to your question will reveal itself. And of course, you can go to ChatGPT and say, tell me the top book on blank. Right, but there are more and more the books that I recommended, right, Exponential Age, Chaos Machine, there's many others that will give you more historical perspective. So the one thing I would say is teach them anthropology, not in the traditional sense, but Yuval Harari's book Sapiens is brilliant. We've got to have to understand where we came from before we know what decisions to make in the path that's unfolding in front of us. It's not traveled, right? So I think it's a process of discovery, and at every step you will start to see that. And these 10 students will say, I'm really interested in this. It draws me in, even though they might be doing a course that they don't enjoy. Have multiple interests as well. Balance it out. If you're in technology, take art. If you're in art, take IT. Take, pull yourself in different directions. That's the only way to figure out what your ikigai is. And then recommendations on that. What these algorithms are really good at. They've aggregated so much of human knowledge over whenever we started generating data. It will lead you in that path. This presentation I did in 4 hours. And the way I did it is I had an idea of what I wanted to share with you today. And I went to ChatGPT, I went to Anthropic, I've got a couple of tools, and I asked it questions. I didn't like everything it told me, so I challenged it. And it would come back and say, no, you're right. I'm literally having a conversation with this algorithm. So things like these, and these images are all from Unsplash, right? Artists from all over the world. So feel free. I think we are being too, put into a box in how we think about what education is. I think break open that box and ask open questions, please.
I heard you say you're a capitalist, and you may have answered this question in a different way, but could you list, let's say, 3 features of capitalism that you like the best?
So when I balance out the intelligence to produce revenue and income, I put it in 3 buckets: ethical, emotional, and economic intelligence. When you find the intersection of that and you find the right problem to solve, the outcome, and I call it a pleasant outcome, is money. Right? I've been in the IT world for now 27 years. And I can't tell you how many projects I would be on as a software engineer in my early career. Somebody would hand me, here's the requirements, those documents, the sales requirements, go code. And I was in my head, like, who's putting these requirements out? Like, what's the bigger problem? What's the bigger picture? That's just because I have a need to understand the bigger story and context before I can help, versus, people giving, here's the task that you have to do. But we're all different, right? In being bottoms up or top down. So the way our company works as well is we will not build any AI solutions for our clients. And these are Fortune 500 companies before doing what we call a strategic assessment, which means we're going to extract your use case, ask you the question of what's the problem, why, and for whom, what's your definition of success, and what are your current metrics of success. That's how we frame context. And it's through this process, we solve the problems, achieve the outcomes that the client wants, and that's what drives outcome. To me, it seems the most logical way of doing business and being a capitalist.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying you attempt to optimize both the ethical considerations, the emotional considerations, and the economic considerations. So you're trying to optimize those 3
Correct.
together.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, 2 items on your good benefits of AI, I would totally question. One was the one about the medical benefits. Because suppose you have a drug company that says, we've got too many people in this world, we have to get rid of a couple billion people. That's not a good benefit as far as I'm concerned, especially if I'm one that they want to get rid of. The other one that I question is misinformation detection.
Mhm.
Suppose somebody says that they don't like some party, Republican, let's say. So then everything about the Republican Party is misinformation, where that's no way to evaluate it. The fact checkers that they were having, they found out the fact checkers weren't fact checkers, they were liars. So those two I question being the good benefit.
But see, just like I said, relationships are complicated, right? They're complicated because on this side, as you
Right.
correctly point out,
Right, that first one.
Right. but this is the ugly part of it. It's just like the social media example I walked everybody through, right? The good news is it created livelihoods, right? It's created new ways that people can actually participate. It helps elevate people out of low income into middle class. It was a new way of making money. But the bad side of social media is the loss of agency. The fact that they're hacking our attention and we can't get off of it, and it's creating loneliness. It's the yin and the yang of this, and you can't see it in just one dimension. You have to see it in 3 dimensions. So the question is, if you deploy AI, I'm gonna rephrase your question, right? If you deploy AI in the healthcare sector, what's the bad and the ugly of it? What's the good, bad, and ugly? You've got to understand, and that's why the way we do the what's the problem, why, and for whom, is because it will give it before us all the impacts. Then you have to make some choices. So to your point, if they have this AI algorithm that says, oh my God, this person's getting sick over and over again, and the insurance company does not want to pay, their algorithms will say deny, deny, deny. So who's in charge?
Uh-huh.
All of these are woven together. That's why this is a very complicated relationship. And so the people in charge with the power to make the decisions,
Right,
what metric of success are they going for?
right. And I think they should keep the government out because they do too much that's good. They make bad decisions that affect us all.
Should we get rid of government?
With that,
Should we get rid of government? We can't, right?
yeah, get rid of government.
But we have positives. Look, we're sitting here safe and sound, being able to have this conversation because we don't have rioters. Think about parts of the world where the government's fallen apart. So good, bad, and ugly, right? All the time. Questions? Anyone else?
Well, I'll,
Please.
I do. I have an observation, I'm not from the STEM field, so this is all relatively new to me. But as an entire public schools teacher and as a minister of the gospel, there are several things that I found interesting in these talks today. And I'd like your opinion for to help me sort of process that. But one thing is the term that we use, metacognition. And it seems to me that at some level, what I've heard today is that the AI has been able to be with educators and people for a long time, learning, thinking about and to apply that. The other thing that has been very striking to me is evolution, because every single thing that has been mentioned in every presentation, especially for any of us who've lived any length of time, we have seen it evolve in one way or another. Whether it is in business, whether it's in the field of medicine, whether it's in the, so I'm just curious, what do you think about the first thing? What are your thoughts about that AI has been able to do what we educators have tried to do, thinking about thinking, learning how to do it and applying it in a practical way? The second question, I'm not sure, maybe, somewhere it's been answered, and that is this whole notion of the evolution of thinking and its practical application using AI. Do those questions make sense to you?
They do. Here's the difference of why humans haven't been able to solve problems like that. It's the aggregation and extraction of insights of the collective knowledge as a human race. If you just simply think about, what are we at, 7.5 billion people, something like that on the planet? Imagine however everybody thinks about solving that problem were to be put into a model that got trained. It could in an instant give you answers, which is what ChatGPT as an example is doing. They don't have everybody, but they will. So the ability for the AI, the algorithms to aggregate insight, and people can argue how the algorithms work, they don't quite understand, right? It's that whole deep learning. But they're able to give you answers that human beings would not be able to process, literally not be able to fathom how to process. That's the difference. So you say, for those questions on what do you think about, it's very interesting, if you know, if you have time, look at perplexity.ai, that's another tool. It is challenging Google search. It's got deep learning models in there. There's another one, I think it's Pi. Talk to it. I think the philosophical part of your question, you'll be fascinated in what it thinks, because that's the aggregation of the human knowledge that's in there. It's a black box though.
I don't know what that means, but my son will tell me, I'm sure.
A black box is when you can't see how the inside's working. You don't know where all the inputs came from. It's dark. Just like social media. How many of you know how the algorithms on Instagram or Facebook work? There's a reason for that. A lot of the engineers that are coming from these companies are coming out and they are shocked at what they see. A Microsoft engineer recently blew the whistle on Copilot. So that's the good, bad, and ugly, right? Again, the good, can you do what you, like, you could take your knowledge to the next level asking questions here, but you should be asking, do I believe what I see? Any other questions in the master?
Well, I was going to ask, you raised a lot of great questions, and one of the ones that resonated with me a lot of them did. One of them was this question of who should be in control. You know, should we be in control? Should, you know, the people that are the users of these social media systems and the generators of this information that's being consumed, or should the companies be in control, the governments, and so forth? And you pointed out that really the current algorithms seem to be tailored toward maximizing profits, maximizing clicks, at maybe the expense of humans. I think probably, you know, most people would agree with that. What's your view of, I mean, I know you point out the good, the bad, the ugly, but do you have optimism that is this going to change? And if so, how? Will it become better? Or will it actually optimize even further? Do you see it like getting worse before it gets better?
It will get worse before it gets better because the technology is so easy. It can be accessed by so many people who don't know how it works, and they will put it into practice. It's like the folks that say asking questions for a case they're going against a judge, and they think they can be their own lawyer. We know this will happen because that's also how humans behave. You see a new shiny tool, you're like, oh, I want to get used to it. Like a hammer looking for a nail. So we will see the outcome, the bad and the ugly in short spurts come out, but that'll teach us on what we want to do. The other question that you asked me is, I am optimistic because when I study and read books like from Yuval Harari, you know, how far we've come through the ages, we have survived a lot. And I think the human condition is where we will be greedy, but they will be equal good and bad forces that will pull. And then we will find our way, it won't be perfect. But I also believe there's enough good people in the world, responsible capitalists. And that's who I'm working with. I also am going to be hopefully going in to raise money. And I don't want to work with VCs where they will say maximize profits. Will I succeed? I don't know, right? Is there a middle ground? I don't know. But I sure will try. But I'm very heartened by the people that I do meet that believe in the mission that we need to have a balanced view of the relationship between humans and machines. But I am optimistic. And I want everybody to take this and think about it, because you will find yourselves in positions where you have to make decisions. You find yourself in a job where, or your companies where you have to make a choice. Think about that. Think about that. Don't not make a choice at all and don't not use it, but think about that narrow path that will allow you to get to balance, which is why I speak at a lot of these events, because I want people to understand, because it's moving so quickly. A lot of people don't understand what this is. So this is the best perspective I'm trying to provide. So you can make choices, you can make agency, right? I'm not asking you to take Instagram off your thing, but shut it off. Use it maybe, you know, for a couple of minutes a day. Don't let it control you. We have to keep AI where it belongs, which is as a tool at the end of the day. Please.
So traditionally, when do you think you will have like a break-even point for AI? Because in my organization, when we look at it, it still is extremely costly. You know, I can give many examples, but where are we today? Where is it gonna be in 3 years, 5 years from now? Where you can actually make, where CFO will actually sign off and be like, okay, this does finally make sense. Because it is expensive.
It's expensive. If you look at it as a tool, you just want to drop in and fingers crossed somebody finds a great use case for it, right? Which is one of the reasons I flipped our business model on its head, because I found myself in that position when I was in the corporate world. And, you know, these big consulting firms and tech vendors would come in at us and say, here, take it, this is gonna be good for you, but who's left holding the bag on the outcomes, the business outcomes? They all wash their hands off of it, right? So that's why we begin with the end in mind. What outcome do you desire? So if somebody tells us, and this is what we increasingly hear, I don't know if they're being politically correct when they say that to us, oh, we're not looking to eliminate jobs. I said, oh, wait,
The reality is you're trying to hit a KPI, to hit that KPI, you're trying to use AI is gonna cost X, are you willing to spend X to hit that KPI?
so by asking these questions, what is the problem? Why is it a problem? And for whom is it a problem? And definition of success metrics that you want and success you have right now as a benchmark reveals a lot. It's fascinating process. Try that at your company. Before anybody says tool, and we do not talk about AI when we are having those conversations with the stakeholders. These are C-level folks. We said, you know, the IT guys, we gotta put a tape on them, like, don't talk about AI in this hour, in this session. We will talk about how we're gonna solve for it, but 90% of the time, the stakeholders that are responsible in the business do not agree on answers to those questions completely. So what we work towards is getting it. And so the CFO in your example are very happy. We're actually getting checkboxes from CFOs, CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, Chief Privacy Officers, way up front in the process. We recently had a meeting with a very large hospitality outfit in Vegas, where the head of IT had plugged ChatGPT into Microsoft Teams,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, Microsoft told us that it's private because it's sitting on the private cloud. I said, yeah, but where's your endpoint that talks to ChatGPT? It's outside. I said, well, how are you gonna tell your users, your internal employees, not to put sensitive information? Because people talk about that on Teams all the time. ChatGPT is gonna be grabbing that to train it. And the CISO on that call asked him to disconnect it right there. Like, we're not doing that, because the CISO said to me, I don't even know what questions to ask. Where's the security issues and risks, right? So I flipped the question around. I don't even talk about, oh, is it gonna be expensive or not? I'm like, what problem do you wanna solve? Is it worth solving? We also take a look at, it's overkill for AI. So what we drew a line at is how much data an organization has. And terabyte is where we've arrived at as the cutoff. If you've got 10 people in your organization, if you're generating a lot of data, terabyte and above, yeah, AI can probably help you out. But if you're 10 people, like mom and pop, don't waste your money. Use human beings to do this, because humans can do this better, faster, cheaper than you would putting in expensive systems.
It's funny that you say that, because I'm unfortunately going to space, and that's ultimately what just happened in the past week. We went down this road for a whole year. At the end of the day, we're like, to your point, it was, well, this was our KPI, we're like, what we can do? We hit that KPI. And, you know, through economies of scale and, you know, creative financing and, you know, all these things that happen in these C-suites, we're like, we pulled the plug, you know, and it gets Fortune 200. We were just like, we had 1.3 million, I had 1.3 million on my desk. And ultimately, we just went to, well, maybe we'll throw 100 at it and see.
What a waste, right?
And we spent a year on it.
Yeah, time, money, effort, wasted.
Presentations after presentations, after case study, business, after vendors, you name it. We brought in Gartner's top 5.
Oh, contact us. Larry knows how to reach me.
And now I'm like sitting there going, we just pulled the plug on it.
Yeah. See, the trust is gone, Safe was like, look, I knew you guys wouldn't, but you gotta get all of that up front. You have to make those determinations way up front.
We did it backwards. We got the money and then we tried to
Yeah.
justify it.
It's a hammer looking for a nail. How many people are going to Home Depot and going, hey honey, look what I got? What you gonna do with it? I don't know, figure it out. Other questions? I think we're almost out of time. Yep. All right, thank you, everybody. Hope this was helpful. Have a great rest of your day.